Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a massive macroeconomic shift happening in what is literally the world's most overlooked wealth creation epicenter. For decades, global investors have been hyper-focused on markets in North America, Europe, and Asia. But if you really want to know where the foundation of the mid-century global economy is being built right this second, you've got to look at Africa. We're going to break down exactly why Africa matters for 2050, pulling some incredible on-the-ground insights. 2.5 billion. Just let that number sink in for a second. By the year 2050, the African continent is projected to hit a staggering population of 2.5 billion people. This demographic explosion, it makes it the undeniable core of the future global economy. We're not just talking about a growing consumer base here. We're literally looking at the future workforce of the entire planet. And what's really fascinating is where these stats are coming from. This is straight from Aliko Dangote, the richest black man in the world, whose net worth hovers around $30 to $38 billion. He points out that not only is 70% of the population under 30 years old, but the continent also holds 60% of the world's arable land and 2/3 of its mineral resources. I mean, these are undeniable statistics, right? They completely validate exactly why we all have to shift our perspective from those old, outdated narratives to Africa's very real future potential. So to really understand this massive shift, we're going to explore 3 pillars guided by successful local entrepreneurs. 1, the ground level. 2, Africa's cultural export. And 3, industrializing the continent. Okay, section 1, the ground level, the informal economy boom. When no one else is looking, that's where you see the best mispriced opportunities. This incredibly powerful insight comes from a super resilient 36-year-old venture capital and private equity manager. And what's wild about her story is she actually launched her own fund at age 29, while 5 months pregnant. Everyone thought she was crazy, not just because she was young and female in this cutthroat space, but because of where she was looking for deals. She knew she had to target the exact gaps that everyone else was completely ignoring. And the gaps she focused on, it represents a mind-blowing $1 trillion opportunity. She realized that while all the other investors were distracted by the really obvious plays, oil and gas, they were totally missing the informal economy. We're talking about everyday street vendors, the folks selling basic essential goods like milk, bread, and water. These are thriving micro-businesses that often operate without formal bank accounts or even brick-and-mortar storefronts. Yet together, they move $1 trillion. Now, when you break down that $1 trillion informal economy, a massive 70% of it is run by women. Think about that. Traditionally, less than 2% of capital goes to women, which means there is this gigantic, highly active market segment out there that is just fundamentally starved for investment and basic business tools. So, the billion-dollar question is how you actually capitalize on this. As our private equity manager points out, the goal isn't to become a street vendor yourself, but to invest in the businesses that enable them, providing basic payment infrastructure, integrating simple mobile tech, streamlining logistics and supply chains, offering access to working capital. Building businesses that empower these female street vendors with basic infrastructure is a largely ignored but absolutely highly lucrative blueprint for becoming a billionaire. Moving on to Section 2, Africa's cultural export, youth, music, and film. Now, you might expect a 57-year-old billionaire oil executive, someone with over 30 decades in the energy business, to tell you to invest in software or maybe raw commodities. But his actual advice? It's culture and entertainment, specifically the explosive global growth of Nollywood and Afropop. Why culture, though? Well, as this executive notes, it speaks the truth of a generation. Nigeria has one of the largest populations of youth in the entire world. And when you have a young, vibrant population that is incredibly plugged in, their culture naturally becomes a massive export. Nollywood, which is Nigeria's film industry, and Afro music are literally taking Africa to the world. Leveraging this youthful voice into global exports is just a direct, incredibly powerful way to monetize massive cultural influence on a global scale. All right, Section 3, Industrializing the Continent, moving beyond raw materials. So, Aliko Dangote realized a fundamental flaw in how business was historically done on the continent. For decades, Africa exported its raw materials, things like crude oil or raw minerals, and then imported the finished goods back at a huge premium. Dangote literally calls this importing poverty and exporting jobs. His solution? Backward integration. He pivoted into real physical businesses to produce those finished goods locally, effectively taking control of the entire supply chain, from raw material to finished product, right there on the continent. The sheer scale of this localized industrialization is just staggering. I mean, Dangote just finished a $20 billion oil and gas refinery. It's the largest single-train refinery in the world, capable of processing 700,000 barrels a day. His company did $10 billion in revenue in just the first quarter of 2024 alone. And he's not stopping there. He has this massive $46 billion investment budget allocated for 2026 to 2030, all focused heavily on the African continent, across sectors like cement, sugar, and petrochemicals. But as Dangote tells it, he's way past the point of just doing business to make money. This isn't just about the bottom line anymore. It's a deliberate, strategic paradigm shift. He wants his legacy to be the true industrialization of Africa. By keeping production local, he's completely changing the trajectory of the entire continent, creating vast local wealth, retaining jobs, and turning Africa into an independent, self-sustaining global powerhouse. When we synthesize all these insights, a really fascinating picture emerges. From a pregnant 29-year-old building infrastructure for a $1 trillion street economy, to a veteran oil executive pointing to youth culture as the next big global export, all the way to the richest man on the continent pouring tens of billions into local industrialization, the takeaway is incredibly clear here. The future of global business relies heavily on the local growth and empowerment of Africa. So leave you with this to think about. By 2050, a quarter of the world's population will be African. If the smartest private equity money, the most experienced energy executives, and the boldest billionaire entrepreneurs are actively building the foundation of the 2050 economy in Africa right now, can you really afford to look away? Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I hope this completely changes how you view the global economic map of the future. Catch you next time.